Before we get started, I want to give a thank you to our sponsor, A Day in the Life Records, run by Dan. Dan has a rich, deep history in the music scene and owns a gorgeous record store located in downtown Lancaster. Dan specializes in all things alternative, hardcore, punk, and so much more. Make sure to check him out, buy a record, and enjoy some fresh tunes.
Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Nick, your host of On the Scene with Martini. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and don't forget, you are the scene.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Nick, Honestly with Martini. I'm here with Brendan from Wheatus. How you doing today, Brendan?
I'm alright, how are you?
Good, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, man. It's nice to be surrounded by all the vinyl.
Yeah, all good music.
Yeah.
This is your first... Sorry, actually.
Oh, that's okay.
Do that.
I did it. I texted you in my pocket just now.
Yeah, one more time, sorry.
No, you leave that in, man.
This is your first day of tour. You guys are doing a U.S. and Canada tour with Keep Flying from like March to April.
Yep.
The
Legendary Keep Flying.
We're in beautiful Lancaster, Pennsylvania. You guys are playing at Tellus 360.
That's right.
All right, you ever played there before?
No. In fact, I don't remember. I could be wrong about this. Maybe I would say probably am wrong about this, but I don't remember ever playing Lancaster.
Fair enough. I mean, I feel like there's not a ton of venues here, but the venues that we do have here are great guests.
Yeah.
Like Tellus always brings in like your Wheatus. They brought in the Melvins last year. They bring in really cool bands for a scene that there's definitely, as you could tell from around this, there's definitely a hardcore, punk, indie, alternative music kind of scene here.
Yeah, Pennsylvania's always been like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's a good spot.
You grew up in Long Island, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the island. Did you feel like that kind of jump-started your music love?
No, I felt the need to, where I grew up in Long Island, I felt the need to leave.
Really?
I had to get out and get to the city, and I moved into Manhattan when I was like 22 or 21. And I've been in New York City resident ever since then. But the Long Island scene, for me, wasn't particularly nice. But right after we left, things kind of kicked off. And that's like, you know, I think Glassjaw and Brand New and Taking Back Sunday, and that whole wave kind of happened like right after we left. So, yeah.
When you left, then was there any like kind of remorse for leaving and like not being able to be a part of that?
No, I didn't. My hardcore phase, I call it a phase because it was part of an evolution of understanding music. Mm-hmm. I was really sort of no genre allegiance when I was in high school. And for that reason, I was like, I knew how to play as many Metallica songs as I knew how to play Prince songs. You know, I was like, I wanted to figure out how the guitar worked and how production worked, and Dire Straits and, you know, Ride the Lightning, Brothers in Arms, Ride the Lightning, Sgt. Pepper, Run DMC, and, you know, It Takes a Nation of Millions. Those were all records that I just had LL Cool J or paid attention to and absorbed. And then hardcore at the time in the 80s was, you know, sort of an offshoot of punk, right? Like Black Flag and all those CBGB's bands. And I was a little too young for those the heyday of the CBGB's matinees in the mid 80s.
Yeah.
I was only 11 or 12. So, and I lived about 100 miles away. It felt like it was, you know, not 100 miles, probably more like 50, 40 miles. And it just felt very distant and very difficult to get to. Also no internet. So it was like, if you heard about hardcore, you heard about it because like a dude walking down the street had a Crumbsuckers patch on the back of his, you know what I mean? Or Crass. Like I remember hearing about and noticing Crass and the Crumbsuckers and L7 and stuff like that before I knew what movement they were part of. So I think that it was just in the mix for me. Then when I started like auditioning for bands in New York City and doing that more seriously, it quickly migrated into what after Gorilla Biscuits and Token Entry and all that stuff became Quicksand and Helmet and those bands and Civ and Handsome and that wave. That was when I really began to gravitate towards hardcore. At the same time that I was doing that with Ani DeFranco and Fugazi and discovering that stuff, I don't really consider Fugazi hardcore music.
I just interviewed Joseph Lally from Fugazi, and he said that he doesn't even really consider hardcore.
No, I don't think it's hard.
Kind of like they are a band, like that's their genre.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't their stated goal to be unlike everything, you know. So I think that mission accomplished on that. But Fugazi was there as a sort of an atonal, like art rock avant-garde kind of thing. In particular, the guitar work was really interesting. It was like a song like Blueprint it's bent. It's out of tune on purpose. It's like kind of weird, right? Yeah. And it's just a chant, basically. I'm not playing with you. I'm not playing with you. You know? And that was attractive to me. The discipline of that was attractive, and also it was a place that you could, if you were a teenager into progressive rock, it was a place that you could go for guitar that wasn't progressive rock, but that had the same discipline. So like Quicksand and Helmet is all this sort of like heavily jazz swung downstroke metal effectively, but it's not metal because of the subject matter and the trappings. So you know, I mean that was really when I started paying attention to hardcore.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Nick, Honestly with Martini. We have take 2 of our interview because I had a little equipment issue, so we're gonna finish it up in the beautiful Tellus green room, which I've actually never been down here. It's very nice.
Yeah, it's my first time as well.
So we kind of ended off, we were kind of talking about Fugazi and stuff, and like the more melodic hardcore sides of music, and about how that was kind of something that you kind of resonated with more. And
definitely. You know, and when I was a kid, when I was like 10, 11, 12 years old, I didn't have a genre allegiance in any kind of way. I loved heavy music and I loved pop, and I was just as down with Prince as I was with, you know, Ride the Lightning or some other kind of heavy thing. And CBGB's was off in the distance, and the whole scene was I was a little too young for that. The matinee shows and all that scene. So in the like early and mid 80s. So when punk sort of slowly morphed into hardcore at the end of the 80s there, and bands like Token Entry and Gorilla Biscuits turned into, you know, Quicksand and Helmet and Civ and Chavez and Handsome and Shudder to Think. The progressive rock that I liked in the 80s was becoming hardcore, was being integrated into hardcore. So it was a cooler, like minimalist idea about how to do something complicated and make it sound not complicated, make it accessible. So like the discipline of the hardcore downstroke music and the really fascinating swings and time signatures in Shudder to Think and in Helmet, and also in Quicksand sometimes, was all really appealing to me, while I was also getting into Ani DeFranco and Fugazi and Soul Coughing and stuff like that kind of stuff that was more eclectic, more artsy. I don't really consider Fugazi to be a hardcore band, as we discussed.
yeah,
They feel much more like an art rock band of some kind to me. Like they invented, their whole purpose was not to be like anything else.
no
right?
labels.
Yeah, no labels. So
no rules.
mission accomplished, I
Yeah,
would say.
I would
We
agree.
can't even call them anything. But they are sort of, because of the Minor Threat Association, they are sort of like considered to be an offshoot of the 80s.
At
Hardcore
least a
punk.
third cousin.
Yeah, or something like that. I find Fugazi a lot more interesting. Like a song like Blueprint or Latin Roots or those kinds of songs, tunes off of The Argument, for example, are much more atonally fascinating, yet still melodic somehow. You know, those guys, I mean, holy smokes.
They can do anything.
They can do really anything and always make it very, very interesting. And it's weird to me that they're sort of referenced now on TikTok for, you know, Waiting Room as some sort of a emo punk song, right? That wasn't even like there wasn't even a thing called that back then, you know. It wasn't even like really considered to be that it wasn't of any other music, really. You know, I guess you could compare it a little bit to Husker Du or to something else that was more like, you know, Jellyfish or those other They Might Be Giants, those other bands that during the 80s didn't fit into anything either. But you're not really making any genre distinctions when you're doing that. You're just saying, well, it's kind of like this other weird thing that didn't have any label, you know. So yeah, I think it's fascinating to me that, like, look, there's no Deftones or Korn or Limp Bizkit or any of the sort of post 95 new metal sort of ish bands. There's none of that without Quicksand and Helmet and Fugazi in some meaningful way. And you know, I mean, you can take or leave all of that stuff, but the fact of the matter is that they reorganized heavy music at the end of the 80s to be much more disciplined and much more melodically interesting, and minimalist at the same time. So that was extremely appealing to me. And when I was in 1991, when I started college at the age of 17, I was, you know, Sunny Day Real Estate, Dinosaur Jr., the Pixies, Fugazi, was, you know, Dinosaur Jr. alone, I think, guitar-wise, and the idea that the broad, full-spectrum wall of Marshall stacks could be employed with a weak-sounding voice on top of it, and that could be negotiated on a record, was just like, huh? Like, like, really? Oh, cool, you know? And so suddenly The Cure had more context, and, you know, REM had more context, and these artists were expanding that, robbing things from metal and doing with what they saw fit, you know. So whether it was Helmet, who are arguably a metal swing jazz band, or Dinosaur Jr., Jay Mascis, who is arguably a folk singer, a la sort of Nick Drake or something like that, who plays with like wall of, you know, this guitar is here to kill your parents.
Yeah.
It's all, for me, it's part of the same like move away from what hair metal was in the marketing of hair metal and the boredom of hair metal, you know, which I never liked.
You were never a hair metal guy?
No. I went to see a lot of those bands when I was a kid because it was 1750. And
Might as well.
and there was like 4 of them on the bill at the local Coliseum. So yeah, I saw Rat, Britney Fox, and Kix on one bill. But I saw Primus open up for Rush as well. So it was like,
I think that beats it.
yeah. So it was like it was a strange transitional time, you know, needless to say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We were kind of talking too about like, just to go back a little bit in terms of your start of Wheatus. Like, you went and were in a few bands. You said that you were in a hardcore band and such.
Yeah, I was in a sort of wannabe hardcore band called Bandersnatch. It was the first time I played CBGBs. I was just a guitar player in this band. And then after that, I was in a band called Hope Factory, and which was a little bit more sophisticated, or actually a lot more sophisticated. Somebody else was writing the songs, and I was the lead guitarist, executing ideas that were arranged and thought up for me, which was different for me. I was learning a lot. It was really cool. And in that band, toured with Joan Jett, opening for her on the East Coast in '96, and that was like the first time I ever hit the road properly. And then like overlapping with that, and at the same time, I was working on the whole entire Wheatus record. And you know, I wanted those gigantic Jay Mascis / late '80s Rush, Boston, gigantic distorted guitars, but I wanted to do them with an acoustic guitar. I wanted a proper like Martin acoustic to make those sounds for the aesthetic and for the versatility, because you can morph it into a regular sounding acoustic. And that was kind of born from the attempt to make Teenage Dirtbag and the rest of the songs on the first record kind of sound like they were this weird hybrid that I wanted to do, where it was like James Taylor and Paul Simon and Ani DeFranco in the verses, or the Indigo Girls in the verses, but then it became this other thing in the choruses where it turned into like Metallica guitars and something really big and sort of monstrous. And finding my voice in that process, it was just like being in the woodshed from 95 until 99, and gradually playing shows, recording and re-recording every one of those songs, figuring out how to make those sounds on an acoustic guitar without it exploding and driving everybody nuts. A little bit of tech, a little bit of technique, and also coming up with this hybrid, because if I'd have walked into a studio in New York in 1996 and said, I want my record to sound like LL Cool J, Stax R&B Motown rhythm section, but also have acoustic verses that are sung like Paul Simon would, at the same time that we morph into this gigantic like Tom Sawyer chorus. I mean, it was like they would have kicked my ass out of there for saying all that shit.
They don't care how much money.
No, they wouldn't care how much money I had, and I didn't have any. So it was like, it was a double-edged sword. I was fucked. So what I had to do is kind of come up with how to do that on a record myself, which took about 4 years, four attempts. Record everything, mix everything, take a look at it, realize you kind of failed. It's not what you had in your head, what's coming out of the speakers. Throw it out, start over again, and did that. The fourth time we did that was the album at my mother's house in February and March of the year 2000. But all the while, I was like, kept it private for a long time. For the first 2 or 3 years of that process, I didn't show anybody. I wanted to keep it private because I wasn't confident about my voice. I didn't know where I wanted to sit in the mix or how my voice would project. Was it going to be a pop vocal? Was it going to be buried like Jay Mascis buries his vocal? What was it going to be? And the record is what it is because of that process. So yeah.
I would say for Wheatus, like, you guys have always been viewed as an independent band, and like you guys are one of the bigger bands in terms of like still kind of doing it DIY to a degree in terms of self-producing, recording. You guys do a lot of your own social media, etc. When and why, why was it important for you guys to become independent?
It's an interesting question. I can't say that it was a mission statement, like the way that Fugazi has a mission statement about, this is not a Fugazi T-shirt.
Yeah.
So
no merch.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't feel excited about music unless I have that completely unfettered, unsuggestible, approach. Right. The development of it for me is a very private exercise, and I don't want to sit at a committee, especially if it's going to be a committee of people who work at record labels who didn't have the balls to stand on stage during the talent show and had a lot to say about it afterwards, right?
Yeah.
So that's who works at labels, and I didn't get along with those people early on. Our independence was luckily preserved because the people at Sony and this one weird A&R guy called Kevin Patrick, who is literally unlike any other A&R guy in the world. He heard our demos and he was like, I want you to self-produce.
Really?
And we were like, okay. Okay, Columbia Records.
Yeah.
That was fortunate because I didn't know how I was going to let... There's like a handful of people in the world I would hand this stuff over to. Andy Wallace and Brendan O'Brien. And that's it, Everybody else, I'd be like, no.
Like, who are you?
Yeah, no, I don't think they'll understand, and that's not anybody's fault. It's just like just trying to come up with something completely unique and accessible, which is one can ruin the other completely. So, it was this process I didn't feel comfortable letting go of, and we wound up with, do you need your guitar? Oh,
Come through? Yeah.
wait, I was just gonna.
I mean, if it's part of the content, you're welcome.
This
to
is
keep
beautiful,
it.
by the way.
Oh,
It is like a.
thank you.
Are those Purple Heart splines in that neck? Yes, they are.
Yes, they are.
Yeah,
That's right.
pretty cool.
Pretty good. Sorry to interrupt.
You got
They're all
everything you
good.
need?
I do. I'm good.
Wonderful.
All right.
Have a great show.
Oh, I hope so.
Just keep flying.
Yes. Keep flying.
I'm Henry from Keep Flying.
That's
Nice
Henry.
to
We
meet
keep
you.
flying, everybody.
Thanks.
Have a good show, Henry.
The shortest relationship we have ever had in these 30 some odd years of making this music, me and then other people, was the record label. We were on a major label for 2 years, and that was it. And it was over. And they didn't have a plan for a second record, no matter what I gave them. Could have been Sgt. Pepper, and they would have thrown it in the trash. So, but the fact that that second record has Lemonade on it, for example, which is in our top 10 on Spotify, it kind of speaks to the fact that, like, you know, you're better off not having a label at all than having a record label screw something up, especially a major label, right? Because the silence is so deafening, and the industry decides that you're not worth it, and you have this massive failure that's on the books. Everybody can see it in public. And, you know, our second record went that way, and it didn't stop it from doing its own work. And that's because we've always made things in this independent way that, like, I just can't get excited about anything else, you know, sorry, you know. And so they're all the records are homemade. They all have some sort of a mission statement in terms of their texture and their sound ahead of time, but they're all sort of like results of that process, which no matter what anybody thinks, never really had the label involved in it.
You guys have been, like you were saying, a band for like 30 years, almost plus for now. You guys have like a pretty wide range of members, kind of in and out, here and there. How do you feel about like the current lineup and having like that kind of family and support system in Wheatus?
Yeah. Well, it's a sort of a revolving door. I think there's over 30 people who've worked with me over the years in the band. We don't. I don't really have any acrimonious departures. You know, there are people who've moved on from this kind of touring life and all that stuff, for which I have ultimate respect, because it's not for everybody. And the other thing is like, I say this to everybody when they come on board, like, hey, listen, if you got something else cooking, if somebody huge wants to poach you, let me know. I'll help you with that. We'll coordinate schedules so you don't burn that bridge, trying to keep mine just in case, because that happens, you know. People lie to each other in these relationships, and I'm always trying to get out there in front of it and be like, we don't need to do that, because if you know, our drummer Madden Class is now touring with Chapel Roan. She did a tour with us in 2024 in between the stuff that she was doing. She comes back from here and there in Australia. We worked with her. So, and there are other situations like that where, you know, if anybody, I think that people who come to this project learn very quickly that I want them to be happy more than I want them to be in the band, more than I want them to be on the road. Because having somebody on the road who isn't happy about what they're doing is the worst case scenario. So I think that approach has allowed a broad you know, book of phone numbers of people who trust that they're not going to get abused in this project, and they're going to come, even though it's really fucking hard, not easy work at all, but like that they're not going to have other opportunities withheld from them. It's not going to be a sort of like a loyalty test or any of that shit. It's not. I'm not into that. So that's one of the positive things about this band is how many members it's had, I think, or how many people have worked in the organization.
And then I just have one final statement and a question, and then we'll end it from here. You were talking earlier too. We kind of brought up about covers and stuff, and you kind of dropped us that you have a cover coming out.
Yes,
with, Fishbone.
Fishbone reached out on TikTok, which blew my mind because.
TikTok's wild.
Yeah, like you don't understand how I feel about Fishbone. Like, talk about a genreless band, right?
Yeah.
They can do anything. They can do anything, and it's not just checking the boxes. If they make a reggae song, it's a classic. If they make a hardcore song, it's a fucking staple. It's like a backbone of the genre. They even did a sort of a grunge record in the early 90s. Like, yeah, if you give a monkey a brain, he'll think he's the center of the universe. Have you seen their cover of Them Bones by Alice in Chains recently?
I'm going to have to now. It's a recent cover.
They smoked that.
Oh, really?
They smoked the shit out of it. I mean, it's like, I listen to it more than I listen to the original.
I always love when a cover you can do that.
It's more wild and scary. And Them Bones is a scary song to begin with. It's not light fare, you know.
Yeah.
And Fishbone somehow makes it way scarier and better, in my opinion. But I think that they reached out because they saw us supporting them. Because every time I saw a Fishbone post, I was like, "Fuck yeah, fuck," you know. So I just finding an old band like that of mine, one of my heartfelt moments in music, as a fan, up on the social media site, and then I got a DM from Chris, keyboard player. I was like, "Ah," you know. And they were like, "You want to cover?" I was like, "Yes. Which
Okay.
one? Wait, you tell me which." You know, fuck, dorking out so hard. And I said, they said, "Well, we're doing we're redoing all of In Your Face, their record from 1986, when I was 12." And they asked if I would pick a song, because the few hadn't been picked yet, and I picked A Movement in the Light, which I did back home in the Bronx while on and off the road with a buddy of mine called Eric Miranda, who played drums for Robert Plant and has been in a band called Plug Bunnies Incorporated and the Plums, and a band that I loved in the 90s called Hunk. He was one of the songwriters in that band. So we happened to live in the same building, and he's got a little basement studio closet, really small, but he records drums down there. And I said, "Man, you want to do this with me? Like, let's just get this done really well and onto this project." And he's like an extended Wheatus family member.
Yeah.
He plays drums sometimes and bass, and he can play guitar. You know, he's a wizard. But he made that record with me. It's him on the drums and the bass, and then some percussion, and it's me on guitar and vocal, and that's a Wheatus record, you know. But it's two guys made it, or three. We had a cellist I sometimes play with called Scrap. Andrew Scrap Livingston played cello on that. So it's an extended family friendship thing. Lots and lots of people who come and go as they're able, or as the needs of the band evolve, you know.
And then, so for my final question then, with all of your roots and stuff, you obviously have a diverse knowledge and appreciation for all types of music. What is a cover that you would like to do? It could be hardcore, punk.
Probably a Walter Schreifels song called My Depressed Friends. He released it on MySpace in like 2005 as part of an EP. And if you look it up, you can find it. It's out there. But I have that on my Dropbox because you can't find it anywhere. I don't think it's streaming anywhere. It's such a great song. I think it's his best song, but, you know.
Arthur Lullaby is probably mine.
Yeah. Well, you could go Use for Glue, or you could go Omission, which is one of my favorites, off of Slip.
That's my favorite song.
Really?
I'm not even joking.
Nice.
I have a video of it. So I was at True Hand Society, which is a tattoo shop down in Philly, and he was doing it like an intimate set, but he was taking requests.
Did you call Omission?
I said Omission, and it was the first time he's ever done it. And I'm
Really?
gonna send you the video. It was the first time he did it, and now it's a part of his acoustic set.
I'll
send it. I'll show you it after this.
Wow, I'm fangirling for you.
I know. He was like, "Hey, Nick." I was like, "Hi, how are you?"
Holy crap.
Yeah, it was really cool. But it's cool too. Like, you see an artist like that be so diverse in terms of, he literally was like playing like, you know, the first few like notes, and he's like, "No, that's not metal enough," and then went even harder. And I was like, "I don't even know how you just did
Well,
that."
it's gotta have the right arrangement. If he's on acoustic guitar, I understand he would have to like flip it somehow, you know, make
Absolutely.
it work, right? Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, I'll have to show you.
You lucky duck.
I know, so cool. And then I was fortunate
I have been
enough.
topped.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to see it. I went to see Thursday at the Phantom Power, which is a local venue here,
Right.
and he opened for him.
Shit.
And he goes, "Here's a mission," and I was like the only one that was like, "Woo, let's go!"
That's great.
But yeah,
What a great story.
well, I appreciate you so much for
Yeah,
coming
thank
on.
you
I
for
really
having me,
appreciate
man.
it.
This was a really fun chat. I feel like we could talk forever about
And
this.
we might have to in the
Yeah,
future do
get
like a
into some of
Zoom
these
full
vinyls.
time.
Yeah.
Do an hour long about some records
Yeah.
after tour.
We'll pick a genre and go for like a vinyl, like you pick three and I pick three.
I'd be so down.